The auction yard on station smelled like metal and sadness. Rows of large creatures stood in glowing cages made of light. These were war horses, but they looked nothing like horses from Earth. They were bigger, stranger, with parts that seemed mixed between horses and wolves, and something else entirely. The Dominion had spent thousands of years making these creatures perfect for war. Buyers from many different alien species walked between the cages. They pointed at the biggest creatures. They admired the ones with the thickest armor growing from their skin. They wanted the ones with the sharpest claws and the angriest eyes. Credits flowed like water as rich commanders bought the best war horses for their armies. Nobody stopped at cage 7C. Inside that cage, a creature lay curled up on the cold floor. Its name, according to the auction list, was, in the military language, this name meant failed design. The creature was different from all the others. Its legs were too long and thin. Its body was too narrow. Where other war horses had thick armor plates growing from their skin, its hide was smooth and soft, almost like velvet. The breeders had tried to fix these problems, but nothing worked. But the worst thing about, the thing that made them shake their heads in disgust, was his eyes. They were large and dark and gentle. War horses were supposed to have fire in their eyes. They were supposed to look like they wanted to kill, looked like he wanted to be loved. "This one will be killed at the end of today," the auctioneer said in a bored voice as buyers walked past without looking. "Its genetic material is useless for breeding, no value whatsoever." Was 16 years old. She had brown hair that she kept in a messy ponytail and dirt under her fingernails from working in the hydroponics bays. Her family had come to station 2 years ago. Her father was an agricultural consultant, which meant he helped aliens grow Earth crops in space. Was supposed to be with him right now, sitting through boring meetings about soil and seeds. Instead, she had wandered away. The auction yard had called to her somehow. She could not explain why. Now she stood in front of cage 7C, her face pressed close to the glowing barrier that kept inside. The creature lifted his head from the floor. His large eyes looked at her. Something passed between them, something that needed no words and no translation. Felt her heart squeeze tight in her chest. "How much?" she asked. The auctioneer made a sound that might have been laughter. His skin was purple and his eyes were black, and he clearly thought she was stupid. "Human child, this creature cannot fight. It cannot carry armor. It cannot do anything that war horses are supposed to do. Why would you want it?" "How much?" The price he named was very low. It was less than made in 2 months of helping in the hydroponics bays. She had been saving that money for a new tablet, but suddenly, a tablet seemed like the most unimportant thing in the universe. "I will take him," she said. The auctioneer processed the sale with visible confusion. He canceled the termination order like someone throwing away garbage. He clearly thought this human girl was making a terrible mistake, but her credits were good, and he did not care enough to argue. The glowing cage disappeared, stood up slowly on his 2 long legs. He was shaking, but he walked toward anyway. When he reached her, he lowered his great head and pressed his nose against her shoulder. Wrapped her arms around his neck and felt tears running down her face. She did not know why she was crying. She only knew that she had found something important. Finding her father was harder than buying. Was not a happy man when his daughter appeared at his meeting with a large alien creature following behind her like a lost puppy. "What is this?" he demanded. His face was red in the way it got when he was trying very hard not to yell. "His name is, I bought him. They were going to kill him, Dad. We are here as consultants, not collectors of alien strays. Do you have any idea how much that thing probably eats? Where it will sleep? What it even needs to survive? I will figure it out. I will cover his food from my wages. Please, Dad." Put her hand on his neck. The creature stood very still beside her, his gentle eyes watching with something like hope. Just look at him. Looked. He saw a malformed warhorse that the aliens themselves had deemed worthless. He saw problems and expenses and complications he did not need. but he also saw his daughter's face. He remembered when she was small, back on the ranch in Montana, back before they left Earth for this contract among the stars. She had rescued every stray animal that crossed her path, dogs with broken legs, cats that nobody wanted, a horse that the neighbors were going to send to slaughter because it was too old to work. Had always seen value where others saw none. Sighed, it was a deep sigh, the kind that came from somewhere below his lungs. Fine, but he is your responsibility, every bit of it. Food, shelter, cleaning up after him, all of it. Hugged her father so hard that he made a surprised sound. Then she led away, already talking to him in a soft voice about all the things they were going to do together. That night, learned that would not eat the standard military ration cubes that all war horses were supposed to eat. The nutrient-dense blocks were designed to keep war horses strong and aggressive. Sniffed them once and turned away with something like disgust. Tried everything. She broke the cubes into smaller pieces. She mixed them with water to make a paste. She tried different flavors from the station commissary. Nothing worked. Would not eat. Hours passed. Sat on the cold floor of the cargo bay that her family had turned into their living quarters. Lay beside her, his head drooping, his sides moving with slow, tired breaths. She did not know what to do. Her first day as his owner, and she was already failing him. "I do not know what you need," she said finally, her voice cracking. "I am sorry. I thought I could help you, but I do not even know what you eat. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe you would have been better off if they had just." She could not finish the sentence. She leaned against his side and started to talk instead, just to fill the silence. She told him about Earth, about the ranch in Montana where she grew up, about the mountains that turned purple at sunset and the rivers that ran cold and clear. She told him about the horses she had trained there, about their different personalities, about how she learned to speak their language through patience and love. His ears, which were long and pointed and not quite like horse ears, swiveled toward her voice. His breathing slowed. He seemed to be listening to every word. Reached into her pocket without thinking. She had grabbed a piece of fruit from the commissary earlier, something called that tasted like honey and peaches mixed together. She had forgotten about it completely. She pulled out the fruit and took a bite. It was sweet and good, and she was suddenly very hungry. She had not eaten anything since that morning. Lifted his head, his nose twitched, his dark eyes focused on the fruit in her hand. "Do you want some?" asked, surprised. She held out not really expecting anything. Stretched his long neck forward. Very gently, so gently that she barely felt his lips touch her palm, he took the fruit from her hand. He chewed slowly, his eyes half closing with pleasure. Laughed. It was a wet, messy laugh because she was still kind of crying, but it felt good anyway. "You like sweet things," she said. "Of course you do. You are not like those other war horses at all, are you? They wanted you to be mean and tough and scary, but that is not who you are." Made a sound, low and soft, and pressed his nose against her shoulder again. Hugged him tight. "It is okay," she whispered. "You do not have to be what they wanted, you can just be you, and I will figure out the rest. I promise." She stayed there all night, sleeping against his warm side. In the morning, her father found them curled together like they had known each other forever. Watched them for a long moment. Something in his face softened. "There is a kitchen assistant job open in the station commissary," he said quietly. "The hours are early, but the pay includes meal credits. Plenty of fruit, I hear." Looked up at her father with shining eyes. "Thank you, Dad." Nodded and walked away before his daughter could see him smile. That creature was probably still a terrible idea. They were still far from home with no idea if this would work out. But watching with that gentle, broken war horse, remembered something he had almost forgotten. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones that nobody else wanted. 6 months passed on station, and people started to talk. The merchants who controlled most of the station's business had laughed about the human girl and her broken war horse at first. They told the story at parties and dinners as a joke. "Look at these foolish humans," they said. "Look how they waste their credits on garbage. So emotional, so sentimental, so stupid." But lately, the laughter had become uncertain. Something was happening too. He was not growing armor or claws or fangs. He was not becoming aggressive or dangerous like a proper war horse should. Instead, he was changing in ways that they did not have words for. He moved differently now. Where he had once cowered and trembled, he now held his head high. His two long legs, which the breeders had called a defect, carried him with a smooth grace that made other war horses look clumsy. He almost seemed to float when he walked. And he was fast, so incredibly fast. Had started running within the abandoned cargo corridors of station. These were huge empty spaces that were too big to be useful for storage. The station's builders had made them by mistake, and now they just sat empty, stretching for miles in the station's lower levels. For N, they were perfect. Here they could move without walls and ceilings pressing close. Here could finally stretch those long legs and show what he could really do. The first time saw him run at full speed, she sat down on the metal floor and cried. Not from sadness this time, but from something else. Something like joy and awe mixed together. Because it was beautiful when he ran. He was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Word spread after the incident with the battle mount. A merchant named Os had brought his prized war horse to the station for some kind of business deal. The creature was massive, covered in armor plates, bred for killing. Somehow it broke loose from its handlers during transit. Somehow it ended up in the lower cargo corridors. Somehow it had been alone except for. She had no weapons, no armor, no way to defend herself. The battle mount weighed at least 5 times what did. Its claws were longer than her arm. Its eyes burned with the rage that breeders worked so hard to create. Any sane person would have been terrified, and was scared, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. But she was also calm in a strange way because was always there. "Run," she whispered to him. She did not need a saddle or a harness. She had learned months ago that she did not need anything like that. She just grabbed his mane and swung herself onto his back, the same way she had mounted horses back on Earth. Waited until she was secure, and then he moved. The battle mount chased them through miles of abandoned corridors. It roared and snarled and crashed against walls as it tried to catch them. Its armored feet sent sparks flying from the metal floor. But it could not catch them. No matter how hard it tried, no matter how its rage pushed it forward, it could not close the distance. Ran like water flowing downhill. He ran like wind through an open field. He took corners at impossible angles, his long legs never missing a step, and held on and felt like she was flying. Finally, after what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes, the battle mount collapsed. Its heart could not keep up with its rage. It lay on the floor, heaving for breath, while it stood untouched at the other end of the corridor. Security cameras had recorded everything. Within hours, the footage had spread across the entire station. Commander Os, the highest-ranking military officer on station, watched the footage in his private quarters. He watched it again, and again. His face showed nothing, but inside his mind was racing. "She rides without a neural compliance harness," he said to his lieutenant, who stood nervously at attention beside him. "Without restraints of any kind. The creature responds to her voice, to her touch." "That should be impossible," the lieutenant said. His voice was careful, the way people speak when they are disagreeing with their boss but do not want to get in trouble. War horses require direct neural override to accept riders. Their aggression must be controlled by technology. Otherwise, they would kill anyone who tried to mount them. This one has no aggression. Os paused the footage on a frame showing laughing, her fingers tangled in its mane as they cornered at a speed that should have sent them both crashing into the wall. The breeders eliminated it. They thought they were eliminating everything useful. They thought gentleness was weakness. The commander stared at the image for a long time. They were wrong, he said quietly. Did not know about the watching her. She did not know that Commander Oss had started keeping files about her, and she did not know that everything was about to change. All she knew was that she loved, and he loved her, and they had found something together that neither of them could have found alone. She had started teaching him tricks, the same way she had trained horses back on Earth. Sit, stay, come, turn left, turn right. Simple things at first, building up to complicated things. Learned faster than any animal she had ever worked with. His gentle eyes watched her face like he was reading her thoughts. Sometimes she was sure that he understood more than just commands. Sometimes she was sure that he understood her. The other humans on station noticed too. They started coming to watch, and in the lower corridors. They brought their children. They brought food to share. For them, watching this girl and her strange alien creature was like watching a little piece of home. It reminded them that beauty existed even here, far from Earth, surrounded by species who did not understand them. One evening, after a particularly amazing run through the corridors, sat with and talked to her father. Had started joining them sometimes, bringing dinner so they could eat together as a family. He is not defective, said, brushing smooth hide until it shone. He is different. They wanted a weapon. They wanted something they could control with machines and fear, but is not like that. He is a partner. Do you understand what I mean? Chewed his food slowly, thinking about her words. I think I do, he said finally. They have been making war horses for 10,000 years. They have spent all that time breeding out everything soft, everything gentle, everything that might make a creature want to bond with its rider instead of being forced to obey. Because they think those things are weaknesses. Exactly. They think strength comes from being tough and mean and scary. They think the only way to get someone to follow you is to make them afraid. Looked at, who had lowered his head into his lap like a giant dog. They do not understand that there is another kind of strength, the kind that comes from trust, the kind that comes from choosing to be together. Smiled and scratched behind his ears. He made a happy sound, almost like a purr. Maybe that is why they could not see his value, she said. They do not know how to recognize strength that does not come from forcing others to submit. Neither of them noticed the small flying camera that hovered at the edge of the cargo bay. Neither of them knew that everything they said was being recorded and sent to Commander Oss. The commander watched the footage in his quarters that night. He watched the human girl and her defective warhorse. He watched them move together like one creature. He watched them trust each other in a way that no had ever trusted their mount. And for the first time in his long military career, Commander Oss felt something he had never felt before. Doubt. The Dominion War Games were held once every 10 years. They were the biggest, most important military event in the entire Dominion. Hundreds of war horses competed in front of millions of spectators. The trials tested combat, endurance, and obedience. Winners earned glory that lasted for generations. Losers were often destroyed in the arena itself. No human had ever participated. The very idea was absurd. What could a soft, emotional human possibly do against the greatest war horses in the galaxy? When Commander Oss sent the invitation to, her father's first response was to say no. It is a trap, said. His face was pale and worried. They want to humiliate you in front of the entire Dominion. They want to show everyone that humans are weak and foolish. They want to make an example of you. Stood by the window of their cargo bay home, looking out at the stars. Stood beside her, his head resting on her shoulder. She was quiet for a long time. Maybe you are right, she said finally. Maybe they do want to humiliate us. Maybe they think it will be easy. She turned to face her father. But maybe they are also curious. Maybe some of them saw the footage. Maybe some of them are starting to wonder if there is something they do not understand. These are the war games, real combat, real danger. You could get hurt. You could get killed. I know, Dad. voice was calm in a way that made realize something important. His daughter was not a child anymore. She had grown up when he was not looking. But I also know what I can do, and I think it is time to show them. She put her hand on his neck. The creature stood tall and steady beside her, his gentle eyes holding a confidence that had not been there a year ago. "We are going," said, "and we are going to win." The journey to Prime took 3 weeks, spent every moment preparing with. They ran together in the ship's cargo holds. They practiced commands and movements. They learned to read each other so completely that words became almost unnecessary. The arena on Prime was the largest structure had ever seen. It could hold millions of spectators. The stands rose up into the sky like mountains made of metal and glass. The roar of the crowd was so loud that it made the air shake. War horses in full battle armor fought in the combat trials. The violence was terrible. Creatures tore at each other with claws and teeth while their riders forced them forward with neural implants. Blood stained the sand. Bodies were dragged away. The crowd cheered for every kill. The endurance race was worse in a different way. Massive war horses were pushed to run until their hearts gave out. Some collapsed halfway through. Others made it to the end but could not stand again. Their riders kicked them and screamed at them through the neural links. The crowd cheered for that too. The obedience trials were worst of all. War horses that had been broken so completely that they barely seemed alive moved through complicated patterns. Their riders controlled every tiny movement through the neural implants. The creatures had no will of their own. They were just machines made of flesh. Watched all of this with a sick feeling in her stomach. These were not partnerships. These were prisons. They did not love their war horses. They did not even see them as living things. They saw them as tools, as weapons, as objects to be used and thrown away. Pressed close to her side, sensing her distress, put her hand on his neck and felt his heartbeat, steady and strong. "It is almost our turn," she said softly. "Are you ready?" Made a sound low and certain, "Yes." The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. "And now, a special exhibition match. A human challenger has requested permission to participate in the War Games. Commander Oss has approved this request. The human will face a single combat trial against the 3-time champion of the War Games." The crowd went silent, then erupted into confused noise. A human, here, at the War Games. Walked out onto the sand with beside her. She wore no armor. She carried no weapons. She did not even have a saddle. Just a girl and her war horse, walking together like they were taking a stroll in a park. The champion who faced her was named Or. He had won the War Games 3 times. His war horse, Devastation, was a monster of armor and muscle, 4 times size, bred and trained for one purpose only: killing. Or rode out to meet with a smile that showed all his teeth. His translator crackled across the arena so everyone could hear his words. "Little human," he said, "you should have stayed on your farm world. This is no place for soft creatures and their soft pets. Go home before you get hurt." Swung herself onto his back without a word. She leaned forward and whispered something in his ear, something private just for them. The starting horn sounded. Devastation charged like an avalanche. The creature was all momentum and power. Hundreds of pounds of muscle and armor and rage rushing toward and like a living missile. Any normal opponent would have met that charge. That was how warhorse combat worked. You faced your enemy head-on. You matched strength against strength. You tried to break them before they broke you. Was not there when Devastation arrived. He had moved, flowing around the armored giant like water around a rock. By the time Devastation reached the spot where had been, she was somewhere else entirely. 2 long legs had carried them away faster than anyone could follow. The crowd gasped. Devastation wheeled and charged again, and again. Each time danced away. He never attacked, he never confronted. He just existed precisely where the larger creature was not. His movements were beautiful, graceful, impossible. Minutes passed. The crowd fell silent, watching something they had never seen before. Devastation's charges grew slower and sloppier. The massive warhorse was bred for short, violent fights. Its armor was a tremendous advantage in combat, but now that armor had become a prison. It trapped heat inside. It added weight that tired the creature out. Every charge cost more energy than the last. Was not even breathing hard. Fight, cowered, or screamed. He was struggling with his neural interface, pushing devastation to keep going even as the creature stumbled. Stand and fight me. His response was quiet, but the arena's design carried her voice to every ear. Why would we fight you? She asked. You are already beaten. Devastation collapsed. The massive warhorse hit the sand like a falling mountain, exhausted to the point of system failure. Its armored sides heaved for breath. Its eyes rolled in its head, or fell with his mount landing hard, his champion's status crumbling into dust. And stood untouched. They had not taken a single hit. They had not needed to. The crowd did not know how to react. Some aliens roared in outrage at this insult to their traditions. But many more were silent, staring at the human girl and her gentle warhorse, their minds struggling to understand what they had just seen. Commander Oss rose from his seat in the viewing stands. The entire galaxy was watching this moment. Every assumption his species had held about strength and value and power, all of it had been proven wrong. The match, he said finally, his voice filling the arena, goes to the human. Later that night, sat with outside the arena, watching stars she did not recognize wheel overhead. The air smelled different here than on station. Somehow, though she could not say why. Her father found her there. He looked tired but happy, happier than she had seen him in years. 12 commanders have offered to buy, said. They are nomming prices that could buy us a fleet of ships. They want to understand how you trained him. They want to learn the human method. What did you tell them? That is not for sale. That partnership cannot be purchased. That trust is not something you can buy with credits, no matter how many you have. Smiled and stroked his neck. The war horse made his happy sound and pressed closer to her. Did they understand? No, sat down beside his daughter. I do not think they can. Not yet anyway. Their whole culture is built on dominance and control. The idea that you could get more from an animal by loving it than by forcing it, that does not compute for them. But they saw what we did. They saw that it works. They did, and maybe that is enough for now. They do not have to understand it to know that it is real. They saw a broken, defective warhorse defeat their 3-time champion without throwing a single blow. They cannot explain it, but they cannot deny it either. Looked up at the strange stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, her home, so far away that its light would take years to reach this place. She had left behind everything she knew when she came to the stars with her father. Sometimes she missed it so much that her chest ached. But she had found something here too, something precious, something that made the pain worth it. Do you think things will change? She asked. Do you think that we'll learn? Maybe. Change takes time. You planted a seed today. The whole galaxy saw what you can do. They saw what partnership looks like. They saw what trust can accomplish. Put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Seeds take time to grow, but they do grow, eventually. Lifted his head and looked at with his gentle eyes. She scratched behind his ears the way he liked, and he made his happy purring sound. A weak creature, a failed design, a genetic dead end. That was what the had called him. That was what they had seen when they looked at this gentle being with his smooth hide and his long legs and his kind eyes. But had seen something different. She had seen potential. She had seen value. She had seen a partner waiting to be found. And now the whole galaxy had seen it too. Come on, said, standing up and stretching. Let us go home. She swung herself onto his back, her fingers finding their familiar grip in his mane. Her father walked beside them as they headed back toward their ship. Tomorrow there would be more offers, more questions, More aliens trying to understand the strange magic that this human girl had worked with a creature they had thrown away. There would be challenges and opportunities and dangers that could not yet imagine. But that was tomorrow. Tonight she had everything she needed: a father who loved her, a partner who trusted her, and a future full of possibilities. Walked through the night with on his back, his head held high, his steps steady and sure. He was not what his creators had wanted him to be. He was something better. He was free, he was loved, he was home. And together, they were going to change the stars.